Kim Jong-un has supervised the test of a ballistic missile controlled by a precision guidance system and ordered the development of more powerful strategic weapons, the North's official KCNA news agency says. The North Korean leader expressed conviction that the country would make a greater leap forward in this spirit to send bigger gift package to the Yankees, in retaliation for American military provocation, KCNA said. Pyongyang on Monday launched the Scud-class missile into the sea, and the North's official media routinely report on such missile launches on the following day. North Korea confirmed its recent test firing of the ballistic missile was successful, the state-run news agency KCNA reported Tuesday, a day after the projectile landed in waters close to Japan. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un guided the launch the third missile test by the nuclear-armed regime in less than 3 weeks, which was carried out in defiance of UN sanctions warnings and US threats of possible military action. The ballistic rocket flew toward the east sky, where the day broke and correctly hit a planned target point. After flying over the middle shooting range, the report said. South Korea's military earlier said the Scud-type missile traveled eastward for 450 kilometers. Japan said it believed it had fallen into its exclusive economic zone, extending 322 nautical kilometers from the coast. The missile test triggered swift condemnation from U.S. President Donald Trump, who said it showed disrespect for neighboring China, the North's sole major ally, which has sought to dampen tensions over Pyongyang's weapons program. Several rounds of UN sanctions have done little to stop the isolated regime from pushing ahead with its ambition to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile (ICBM) that can deliver a nuclear warhead to the continental U.S. The U.S. Navy has reportedly ordered a third nuclear-powered aircraft carrier to join the San Diego-based USS Carl Vinson off North Korea amid increasing tensions. Sources told news outlet The Voice of America that the USS Nimitz, which has scope to carry 90 aircraft, would join the Vinson and the USS Ronald Reagan in the volatile region. The Times of San Diego reported that the Navy rarely deploys 3 aircraft carriers to the same region. The decision comes as North Korea has stepped up missile testing and vowed to develop weapons that can strike the United States. The USS Nimitz, the U.S. Navy's oldest operating aircraft carrier, just departed San Diego to head into the Pacific, where the USS Carl Vinson and USS Ronald Reagan carriers are already keeping watch over a defiant North Korea. The Nimitz will sail with the guided missile destroyers USS Kidd and USS Shoup from their designated carrier strike group, as well as the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers USS Howard and USS Pinckney, and the Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS Princeton, according to a U.S. Navy statement. By Business Insider's count, that will mean the U.S. has 3 aircraft carriers, 2 cruisers, and 12 destroyers simultaneously operating in the Pacific, often with Japanese and South Korean Navy ships nearby. While the U.S. Navy has stressed the routine nature of these deployments to Business Insider on multiple occasions, there's no denying that this is a huge display of force in the Pacific. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis has defined North Korea as a clear and present danger to the world, and the UN has moved to once again sanction North Korean businesses and individuals in an attempt to cut off the flow of funds into the world's most heavily militarized country.
As the Air Force's budgets declined toward the end of the Cold War, the service could no longer justify keeping the expensive SR-71 in its inventory, especially as new threats started to emerge. The service expected that a combination of satellites and other technical means would replace the venerable jet. Capable of cruising at speeds in excess of Mach 3.2, the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft to ever to see operational service. But even though its performance has never been matched, the SR-71 was retired as the Cold War drew to a close. The Blackbird was initially retired in 1990, even before the fall of the Soviet Union. Eventually, however, 3 of the jets were reactivated by the Air Force, at the insistence of Congress, for a brief period between 1995 and 1998. Meanwhile, NASA flew research missions with the aircraft until 1999. In the end, the Blackbird was retired without a true replacement. But why? Ultimately, while the SR-71 delivered unparalleled performance, it was its operating costs that condemned the Blackbird to early retirement. Moreover, the U.S. Air Force had doubts about the aircraft's survivability versus a new generation of Soviet, and later Russian, air defenses and interceptors, like the Satan Grumble, and other advanced S-300 derivatives, and MiG-31 Foxhounds. In fact, the Air Force actively resisted congressional attempts to revive the program during the 1990s because of those very reasons. As the Los Angeles Times reported in 1989, the Air Force decision to retire the Blackbirds in 1990 is based on several factors. In congressional testimony, Air Force Chief of Staff General Larry D. Welch identified the increased survivability of reconnaissance satellites, SR-71 vulnerability to the Soviet SAM-5 surface-to-air missile, and the cost of maintaining the SR-71 fleet. The cost factor is the most significant to the Air Force because it limits expenditures in other areas. Reagan Administration Air Force Secretary Edward C. Aldrich, Jr. estimated that the money used to operate the SR-71 fleet could operate and maintain 2 tactical fighter wings. Indeed, by some accounts, the SR-71 cost as much as $200,000 per hour to operate when all of its ancillary expenses were factored in. Part of the cost stemmed from the fact that it was a small specialized fleet. Because of the small number of jets built, 32, and its unique design, the SR-71 was a maintenance hog. It also required a specialized logistical train, particularly for its exotic fuel, which cost $18,000 per hour in 1989 dollars. The SR-71's JP-7 fuel, which also had to be carried on board specialized KC-135Q tankers to refuel the Blackbird, was designed to be a safe, high flash point fuel that would not vaporize or blow up under extreme heat and pressure. It had such low volatility that one could supposedly extinguish a match in a puddle of JP-7. But that also meant that the fuel was difficult to ignite using the convention systems, which meant Lockheed had to develop a trethylbarine-based chemical ignition system for the SR-71's engines, adding to the jet's complexity and maintenance costs. As the Air Force's budgets declined toward the end of the Cold War, the service could no longer justify keeping the expensive SR-71 in its inventory, especially as new threats started to emerge. The service expected that a combination of satellites and other technical means would replace the venerable jet. One such system was the stealthy unmanned Lockheed Martin RQ-3 Dark Star reconnaissance drone, which was cancelled in 1999. But while the RQ-3 itself was cancelled, the Air Force continued to develop a Tier 3 contested airspace reconnaissance capability in secret, which resulted in the Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel and allegedly the Northrop Grumman RQ-180 unmanned aircraft. If the RQ-180 does exist, it effectively replaces any capability gap created by the absence of the SR-71 Blackbird.